You may have never seen the Old North Bridge in Concord from this vantage point before, but the American militiamen who responded here on April 19th, 1775 saw it from this exact spot. And it was here in this very field that the American militiamen made a decision so major that it resulted in some of the very first shots of the American Revolution being fired here at the Old North Bridge. Hi everybody, it's me, Katie. Welcome back to my channel where it is all Revolutionary War all the time. And today we are at the Old North Bridge in Concord, Massachusetts, where some of the very first shots of the American Revolution were fired on April 19th, 1775. Now, if you have visited my channel before, then you are not surprised to find me here. But if you haven't, then welcome. I am a Revolutionary War researcher, writer, and speaker based in Boston, and this channel is intended to be a fun and friendly place where I share my research. But be forewarned, on this channel, we also venture out on historical action adventures. We visit battlefields, burying grounds, city streets, even bridges where events of the American Revolution happened. So fasten your seatbelts, everybody, because today we are out on another historical action adventure. And if you haven't already done so, I hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel so that you don't miss out on the next one. The British troops entered Concord about 7 a.m. on April 19th, having already been through Lexington, leaving 18 people shot on Lexington Green. The Concord militia and minute companies knew that the British had entered Concord, but they did not engage them immediately. Instead, Concord militiamen moved about on the high ground and observed the British, until eventually the Concord companies took a position on a particularly elevated piece of land overlooking the North Bridge, right here. In 1775, this was a cow pasture, but today it's known as the Muster Field, and it is part of Minuteman National Park. Okay, so this is what historical action adventuring is really all about, because I grabbed the camera and I'm heading up to the tallest point. Ooh, the big thorn bush. I'm climbing to the tallest point on this kind of raised, elevated land, and I'm terrified. The ground is really rutted and there are holes in rocks, but you get to the top and all of a sudden it is like magic. North Bridge comes into view and we can see what the militia troops saw. And I understand why this spot was chosen, because we're not really close to the bridge at all, but you can see it. I'm going to see if I can zoom in for you all. This is what action adventure is all about getting off the beaten path. Okay, I'm on my way back down now. And they watched as 7 companies of British light infantry troops crossed over North Bridge. 4 of those companies continued on a mile or two in order to search the farm of Colonel James Barrett. And that was where the British believed a large amount of provincial munitions and military stores had been secreted. But 3 companies of British light infantry stayed behind to guard this bridge. So one company stayed behind on this side of the bridge. They needed to ensure that the units who went beyond to search Colonel Barrett's farm could get back. The other 2 companies ventured out a little bit to these kind of small hills and ridges away from the bridge in order to guard the roadways that come through here and secure this whole area. So these 3 companies that had been left behind to secure this area totaled about 100 British troops. And for this, they had all been put under the command of Captain Walter Sloane Laurie of the 43rd Regiment. And something very interesting about Captain Laurie is that 2 months later, he would be in charge of the burial detail at the Battle of Bunker Hill. So he and his men were in charge of collecting and burying all of the bodies that were strewn about the Charlestown Peninsula on June 17th. And it was Captain Laurie who came across the body of Dr. and Major General Joseph Warren, who had been killed at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Captain Laurie later reported that when they found the body, they, quote, stuffed the scoundrel along with another rebel into one hole. Now, meanwhile, back here at the muster field, while the British were kind of splintering off into different groups with different objectives, the ranks of the militia gathering here were increasing, all joining the Concord militiamen until there were about 400 militia troops gathered here in the muster field, watching the British at the bridge. And then suddenly, from this very spot where we're standing right now, the militiamen see smoke rising into the air from directly above the town of Concord. Now, some British grenadier companies, instead of being sent out to the North Bridge, were ordered to stay here in the town of Concord. And they were going house to house looking for hidden military stores. And they didn't find much of consequence, but they did find gun carriages, wooden ones that would burn. And so they heaped all of the wooden gun carriages that they found in a big pile, probably along with some other stuff too. And they set it on fire. Now, they weren't intentionally trying to set fire to the town, but they built the bonfire so close to the town hall that it caught on fire. And that, in turn, jeopardized a lot of the wooden structures that were located close to the town hall here in the middle of this densely populated area of town. So for me, the troops are acting totally recklessly and with wanton disregard for this property, where they're building bonfires so close to these structures that they could burn. But a 71-year-old Concord woman by the name of Martha Moulton came to the rescue. And she was kind of riding out this whole thing by herself in her house, though she might have had an 85-year-old man with her or near her at the time. And all morning, British officers had been coming in and out of her house, and she was providing them with food and water. And she noticed that the townhouse was burning. And she told the officers who were making themselves at home in her house, you need to order your men to extinguish this fire. It's going to spread and catch the whole town on fire. And they kind of just placated her and said, oh, mother, don't worry about it. But she insisted. She said, no, the townhouse is burning and it's going to spread. Finally, the British condescended to order their men to extinguish the bonfire in Concord, which they did. So the militiamen on the hill see the plumes of smoke rising above the town of Concord. And they don't know about the bonfires and the gun carriages. They think the town of Concord is being burnt. And of course, for many of the men, their homes and their families are in that direction. And Lieutenant Joseph Hosmer of Concord probably spoke for a lot of the men on the hill when he's believed to have said, will you let them burn the town? And I think it was right then, in that moment, that the decision was really made, because the only answer to that question was no. It was in the muster field that the Americans decided they were going to Concord. They were going to cross the North Bridge to get there, whether it was guarded or not, or they'd die trying, which some of them did. We are going to follow in the exact footsteps of the American militia companies and walk the exact path that they did as they headed toward that fateful engagement with the British at Northbridge, all in the next video. If you enjoyed this historical action adventure, let me know by hitting the like button. I hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel so you don't miss out on our next historical action adventure. Thank you all so much for watching.